The short answer here is however you want. In today's video, we're talking about how to plan a wedding processional. Your wedding day is finally here, you're all gussied up, you've got your best crew with you, and everyone is ready to go. The photographer and videographer are ready to capture all of the action. But then what? Who's gonna walk down the aisle, and what order should they go in? Stick around until the very end because we're gonna walk you through all of this. Pun definitely intended. Planning out your processional can be tricky, so we're gonna break it down for you today and make sure it's super easy for you to figure out. This task can be tough, and ironically, you likely may not even see the outcome of your planning efforts on this. There are so many questions to think about when you're figuring out all of this processional stuff. Who do you want to include? What order do you want them to go in? Are they filing in from the outside or starting closest to you and making their way further away from you? Where do you want them all to go? Are they sitting, standing, both? Do married or dating couples have to walk together? Should you organize people up front by height? Do you need to organize in traditional male-female couples? What if you have a group of 3? So many questions. What if you don't want to have an escort? It's a lot. The only way to get this figured out is to dive in. Let's go. First, who should you include in your processional? Typically, you'll include grandparents, parents, wedding party, and yourselves. For grandparents, it can be helpful to consider if they're capable of walking alone. If not, then they can usually be escorted by someone else. If it seems like it will be too difficult of a task for them, you can also have them preceded up front before the processional begins. What order do you want folks to go in? A very common processional order we've seen a lot would be grandparents of the groom, grandparents of the bride, parents of the groom, mother of the bride, bridesmaids and groomsmen in pairs, maid of honor and best man, flower girl and ring bearer, father of the bride and bride, with the groom either taking his place prior to the processional beginning or walking down with his parents. But, and this is a big giant baby got back style but, there are many ways to do your processional. With 2 grooms or 2 brides, you're gonna make this part go however you prefer. You can skip including grandparents, skip including parents, have your flower girl go first, or whatever works for you. Honestly, the key is that you make a plan and practice that plan with everyone at the rehearsal. In my opinion, it's more helpful that your processional be organized in general than that it be organized in any specific way. What happens when everyone gets up there? Where do they go and how do they get there? Again, the rules here are flexible, but typically this is what we see. Grandparents and parents will be seated in the first rows. The kiddos will either be seated up front or circle back around to be seated in the back, depending on their age and ability to sit quietly during the ceremony. Then for your wedding party, it usually looks nice if the people standing furthest away from you come in first and the following folks work their way closer to the center. Okay, I'm gonna do a little mind reading right now. Some of you are thinking, but what about height? Don't I have to organize people by their height? Tallest, closer, and shortest further away? I mean, sure, if you care about height and you know enough of everybody's heights to plan it that way, you can totally do that. We've had some folks who prefer that solely for aesthetic reasons. But most of our couples organize their wedding party differently, choosing to have those closest to them relationally also be closest to them physically on their wedding day. Often we'll see siblings or best friends closest, and then other friends after that. To some folks, it can feel a little odd to be ranking your people. So if you feel that way, maybe go back to the height method. Either way, try not to get too hung up on this one thing. There are lots of other decisions you need to make throughout your planning process, and you can't let yourself get stuck by putting too much weight on one part of a big process. Now, for some of those nitty-gritty questions here. What if you have married or dating couples in your wedding party? Do they have to walk together? The short answer is no. It's your wedding, and it usually isn't a huge deal if folks are paired with someone else for a short walk up to the front. If either of you prefer they be matched that way, it's of course totally fine to do it. Do you need to organize in traditional male-female couples? Nope. We've seen a variety of bridesmen, groomsmaids, and more. Your wedding party should be the people who love and support you the most, so put them wherever it makes sense for you. What if you have a group of 3 that you'd like to walk together? Totally, do that. Just make sure your aisle is wide enough for them to walk comfortably before you plan on it. It can get a little tricky if not. What about the couple? When and how should they enter? What if you don't want to have an escort? The short answer here is however you want. We've had couples walk down the aisle separately, together, with an escort, alone, first, last, or not at all. Think about what makes you feel most comfortable and excited for your wedding day and plan it that way. Keep in mind that your ceremony site, especially if it is a house of worship, will possibly have input into this process too. If their plan doesn't mesh with yours, you'll have to decide how much that matters to you before moving forward. If you haven't planned out your ceremony playlist yet, you'll definitely want to watch the video linked up on screen now so you can get some tips and information on that crucial step of wedding ceremony planning.